Welcome back, Truth Seekers. So happy to have you here today. I'm TJ Hale, and I've got a very special guest. Now, I got to say, I got some heat a while back for basically using the word truth seekers. I was on social media and someone said, when you say, hey, truth seekers, I feel like it sounds insincere, disingenuous. I don't really like the way that sounds. And I thought it was interesting because I think where that came from was from Anne McElhenney, who was working on the Gosnell movie. And today I'm very fortunate to have her husband, Phelim McAleer, on to talk about not only the movie, but the challenge of getting the movie made, produced, and bring it to life so that everyone can see it. So Phelim, welcome to the show. Happy to have you. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you very much.
So it's interesting that I want to start with that because I believe when I was reading the book, it was Anne who talked about not really being pro-life and also having a little bit of antipathy towards activists and feeling that they were insincere and they didn't need to use graphic propaganda to get their point across. I think she actually compared the abortion photographs to heart transplant photos. So there's nothing intellectually satisfying about using gross pictures to get your point across. But she said she's a truth seeker because as she learned more about it, she allows the truth to take her where it will, and she's not stuck on her opinion. Did you feel the same way originally about this?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to insult anyone, but to be honest, I didn't believe those pictures. I didn't believe the pro-life pictures. I thought they had been photoshopped. So I felt that they'd be photoshopped by activists, well-meaning, sincere activists. And but then once we started to study what an abortion is, and because we had to do that for the book and for the film, we had to find out what was the legal thing, what was the illegal thing, where was he on the spectrum, was the case valid, all these things, and when you look at evidence and when people give evidence under oath, all the political slogans go out of the way. All the Photoshop pictures never appear because that's perjury. You're left with a very definite description of what is legal, what is not. And to be honest, we realized we were wrong. The pro-life people who've been telling the truth. We also realized, by the way, that Planned Parenthood are geniuses because we're, I'd like to think, intelligent, cynical journalists. But we believed the Planned Parenthood story, not the pro-life story.
Interesting. To hear you call them geniuses, I'm thinking a lot about what's happened since the movie came out. So I got a lot of stuff I want to run over with you. But for those of you who haven't seen my interview with Anne McElhenney, it was over a year and probably about 14 months ago, I think, that I did that. And at the time, the movie was already done. It was sitting on the shelf. You'd raised over $2 million in IndieGogo, biggest raise of all time, after being kicked off of Kickstarter. So we call it Kickoff Starter. And because they didn't want to touch it. And I was thinking about how I went to a conference years ago with Rudy Rudiger. Remember the movie Rudy about the Notre Dame football player?
Yes.
And he said, if you enjoy my movie, I think you should know the only thing more difficult than living that experience and getting on the field at Notre Dame was getting anyone to make a movie about it. No one cared about my story. No one thought it would make a good movie. I see a lot of that in what you're doing here, where you even have doctors in the movie saying, hey, look, this is rough, but I went to school with Gosnell. No one's going to touch us with a 10-foot pole. Is that kind of the slogan of getting Gosnell made into a production?
Yeah. It was, you think it was difficult prosecuting him? You should try making a movie about him in Hollywood. No one would fund it. Kickstarter wouldn't allow us to crowdfund it on their platform because they didn't want to use the word murder, even though he's convicted of murder.
Of course.
They sent us a letter saying, that calling him a murderer would offend their community guidelines. And I wrote back and said, I don't want to be part of any community that lies straight off the bat. So, we struggled to get it made, struggled to get actors, struggled to get people to work on it. And then we got it made, and then we struggled to distribute it. And now it's coming out on October 12th. You've seen it. We've been doing some free screenings. The response has been overwhelming, 95% positive, 100% positive. I think people are very relieved, by the way, that it's not gory, that it's PG-13. That's something we always want to emphasize with people.
That surprised me, by the way.
Yeah, it surprises a lot of people. I mean, it's our biggest barrier, actually, at this stage, is people think, I don't want to see a gory movie. I don't want to see a horror movie. And this is not a horror movie. This is a courtroom drama. This is a trial movie. Wouldn't you agree? Or what do you think? Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. So after reading the book, and by the way, I can show people at home the notes that I took to prepare for Anne McElhenney. I mean, I think I have 12 or 13 pages of things I want to ask about. And so when I went to see the movie, I thought, how are they going to put all of this content in a 90, 110 minute movie. It's just not possible. And so when I went to see it, one of many people I loaned the book out to who since purchased it said, is it a docudrama? Is it making a murder? Are they just going to recreate it? How? I'm like, I have no idea. I'm really curious to find out. So a couple things that surprised me. One, I was surprised there was no gore, no shock value whatsoever. You didn't even show the picture of baby Boye. You kept showing or basically representing other people seeing it, and I expected to see it at some point, and you didn't do it. And I thought that was true to the message that Anne sent, that she just doesn't believe in the activism way of shocking people because it turns them off. And whether that's true or not, I actually thought it was even more powerful. I thought the representation of going through Gosnell's his workplace was fantastic. I thought it was interesting, the message of really that it was the DEA and the pill mill that got him caught. If it hadn't been for the fact that he was selling illicit drugs, he'd probably still be doing abortions today. I could recount the entire movie. What I really want to ask you is, how do you decide what to cut out? I think there was no mention of the fact that he didn't have residency as an OBGYN. There's no mention of the fact that passersby and police interviews showed that people said that they would rob people in broad daylight on the street. They would essentially, hold on, I got the wrong screen up here. They would, no, I guess it's just going to be you for the time being. They would strip buildings of copper nearby, but that for all the time Gosnell was there, despite the fact that he was basically working in cash and had hundreds of thousands of dollars stashed, nobody ever touched that building, and they said it's because that place is evil. So I think the challenge for me would have been, how do you decide what to leave in the movie?
Even it's empty. It's an empty building now, but it was closed like that. So there's drugs in there. There might even be cash in there. There's equipment in there. No one's ever gone in. I mean, we were very keen. Sorry. I think the reason we didn't show Baby Boye is not because we didn't want to be activists, and we don't want to be activists, but we want this movie to be seen by as wide an audience as possible. And once you start showing dead people, that really does cut a lot of your, about 99% of your audience, I would think. So it was keen. What did we decide to keep in? I think we wanted to keep in the facts of the story. He's America's biggest serial killer. There was media malpractice. There was political malpractice that allowed him to kill. There was medical malpractice that allowed him to kill, that ignored what he was doing. The struggle to get it out, and then the fact that it was a mass citizen journalism campaign that meant he was free that meant in the end he was convicted, that created the will to convict him and the will to cover this story and to get this story out there.
I want to talk a little bit about the industry as a whole. I have no experience in the movie industry. I know you made Frack Nation. You've had a lot of, you've been around the block a few times. Tell me about this transition from where in the old days you published a book and you needed the publisher to get the audience. Today, people like Lena Dunham can get a $3 million advance. People like Hillary Clinton get a $14 million advance, despite the fact they can't get anyone to come out and see, or they can't fill a small hall. And it's because the publishers and movie studios are relying on the sure thing. They want to make sure people are going to come out and that a project will be profitable. Yeah. So you go out and you set the record for the highest IndieGogo movie funding of all time, and nobody jumps at the opportunity to say, obviously we have a potential moneymaker here. Take me through the back alley of how does this process work? Why do people turn you down?
Well, it's abortion, and not only is it abortion, it's something that shows a negative. I just want to report here for all your viewers. Anne McElhinney has just dropped me in a cup of tea. Say hello to TJ. Yeah.
Anne.
I can. Hello.
Hey, good morning. How are you? I'm
not long up.
Hello.
You got a cup of tea anyway.
Is there such thing as the perfect woman? You tell me.
Yeah, exactly. It was just our wedding anniversary there, 17 years.
Oh, congratulations. What does a couple like you do for your wedding anniversary?
Go to murder trials. I don't know. Have screenings of our films about mass murders. Yeah, it's an interesting way to spend an anniversary. Yeah, talking about a mass murderer. So, sorry, where was I before I got my...
We're talking about navigating the back alleys of Hollywood and them not wanting anything to do with abortion.
yeah, there are about three pro-abortion movies in the pipeline at the moment. So it's not that they don't want anything to do with abortion; it's they don't want anything that would shine a negative light on abortion, and that's what this Gosnell movie was up against. I mean, there's movies on Wendy Davis coming out. Sandra Bullock is going to play Wendy Davis, abortion movie. There's one on the Underground Railroad type thing for abortion before Roe v. Wade, and there's a third one I can't remember. And they're all in the pipeline, and they're all pro-abortion, and they're all going to get made. Hollywood won't touch anything that's anti-abortion, or actually, we're not anti-abortion. We're telling the truth. The film is heavily, you know that from the book. The film is heavily based on actual court transcripts.
Of course, sure.
Yeah. So.
And as someone who had read it, it was just point by point by point, and I kept thinking, are they gonna cover this? Are they gonna cover that? And the one thing that I really liked at the end was when. And in my defending, I'll give you an example. I'll give you an anecdote. I went out this past weekend with some friends who I don't usually talk about the deep stuff with, but we're getting there. And we were talking about favorite movies. And I said, hey, one thing you guys need to do after they all took their turns, said you need to go see Gosnell on October 12th. And they all gave me a look like, never heard of it. What are you talking about? I said, it's a movie about a doctor who killed babies. I go, but the thing is, it really happened. He did it for decades and no one ever did anything about it. And he's finally in prison. So there's a documentary. You have to go see it. So I'm trying to, how do you proselyte this message to them that they're unfamiliar with? And I remember the person I thought would be the most interested, the person I knew was a Christian. She's a mom. She wants to have more kids. She goes, I just don't think I could watch that. That sounds really sad. I'm thinking, no. You must go, you don't have a choice. You need to go watch this movie. You need to tell all your friends about it. There's just this narrative that they don't want anything to do with it. It's like watching Gosnell eat salmon teriyaki with blood on his fingers. You kind of go, I don't like this. I don't want to know this is happening.
Yeah, as you know from the book, that's a true story. And the FBI agent watching him has never been able to eat salmon since. It's our biggest barrier to people going to see it is that they fear it might be icky or gory or horrible, and I'm glad that you're saying it's not. I mean, it's a Law and Order episode. If you watch Law and Order, you can watch this, and many tens of millions of people watch Law and Order every week. I mean, that was deliberate. We wanted to make it look like something that people would be very familiar with, so they'd be very comfortable with it.
So when I was there were people asking John Sullivan, the executive producer's questions after the movie ended. And I don't recall what he said about the actress Sarah Jane Morris, who was lovely, by the way. Thank you for that. But he made a comment that they went through several actresses. Now, can you tell me, was it because actresses didn't want to take the role or because you were looking for the right person? I didn't hear what he said, so I want to ask you about that.
You know, it's so long ago, I can't remember that particular role. I mean, I know, by the way, happened to be there for Sarah Jane's audition, right? And we had two actresses. We were down to two actresses, and the director, the other actress, was a friend of the director, and I'm the producer. And at the end of the day, it's up to the director. The director really calls a shot on the lead actress, really. And but I was there, and they both acted out a part. And Sarah Jane brought tears to me. I wrote the piece, but she brought tears to my eyes reading it, and I just looked at Nick, the director, and his friend had just done her piece, and we both looked because it has to be Sarah Jane. She just nailed it. So yeah, I mean, I think we were okay with that actress, but for all the other roles, or a lot of the other roles, we had people would accept the role, right, and go, oh yeah, that's great, yeah. On say a Wednesday, and then we'd get a phone call. No, we'd get an email on a Sunday saying, "Oh, I just remembered, I'm going for 3 weeks holidays, a 3-week biking holiday in Europe at that time." And it's like, I think you might have planned that in advance. I think you might have known about that. I think you're not telling me the truth. What's happened is they've gone all excited to their friends, they've gone all excited to their family. They may not be that political themselves, and they say, "We've got this great thing. It's a really interesting film. It's a true story. It's about this guy, the abortion doctor." And they go. And then they go, the friends go, "You can't do that one. That's wrong. You can't do that. That's going to, set back Roe v. Wade or whatever." And they realize their friends will disown them if they play this meaty, brilliant role based on a true story.
think that's one of the struggles when you watch the movie is you get the DA, I forget the judge's name, who basically said, I don't want to hear abortion. This is not about abortion.
That's
Pennsylvania, they'd love to take our pro-choice away. It's not going to happen. And you have the actor sitting there going, people got murdered here. What are we talking about? It's confusing.
And that grand jury judge that we featured, that is based verbatim on an interview we did with the grand jury judge. That is 100%. That is what she said. And that was her idea. That was her plan when she was doing the grand jury, when she was presiding over the grand jury. So this case faced a lot of barriers. The film faced a lot of barriers. People don't want to do anything that might question that abortion is 100% a good thing. They won't allow those questions to be even asked. You're not allowed to ask them.
So a couple of things. I want to talk about what's transpired since with David, I think it's DeLion, I forget his name, and some of and Kavanaugh, etc. But I probably should have started off by talking about your personal experience. And I believe it was you who was going in Philadelphia, working on promoting Frack Nation. I can't recall from my conversation with Ann, but you went to the courthouse that was completely empty. And I think the quote I heard you say was, I'm hearing the most unbelievable witness testimony I've ever heard, and there's nobody else there to listen to it. And that's how this all started. Can you kind of take the listeners back to understand how that happened? So
we made the documentary Frack Nation available on all good streaming services, Amazon, Netflix, and you can even buy a DVD. And so fracking's big in Pennsylvania, right? So I was in Pennsylvania for the fracking trial, and not for the fracking trial, for the fracking documentary.
Sure.
I had a couple of days off when I was in Philadelphia before screening, and of course, what do you do? What does a journalist do on his day off? He looks at the local paper for an interesting trial and goes down to sit in an interesting murder trial, because that's what we do on our day off, because we're not really that wise, really. At times, we should, instead of going to the museum or the bar or whatever, we go to a murder trial. So I walk into
That's for normies.
Sorry?
That's for normies. You're not normal people.
Yeah, normies do normal things. So I go into this trial, and, so there in front of me is Gosnell Lick sitting like a few feet away from me, America's biggest serial killer. On the wall, blowing up the size of the wall, is a picture of baby boy A and all their victims. And it's like, that is the most shocking picture I've ever seen in my life. And then the evidence is like, oh my God, they're talking about this baby boy A and how he lived and died and breathed. And then they're talking about all the, and then they start talking about the mechanics of abortion. I'm going, oh my God, I never knew that. I never knew this. This is amazing stuff. Like this is, and I don't mean it's amazing in a Christian way or a political way. It's just amazing. It's an amazing story. It's I wrote something today or last night, and I think people mightn't like it, but I call it a truly American story, and it is, and I don't think that's a good thing, but it is. And but the most amazing thing was behind me. I looked behind me, and the prosecution had rented the biggest courtroom they had because there was going to be massive media presence, they believed. The place was empty. There was a couple of local reporters, and that was it.
Yeah, as you say, American story, I'm thinking, of course, it was Irish journalists who had to have the courage to break it because everyone else knows better.
Yeah, funny. Yeah, I'm not sure it's courage, right? If you want to call me courageous, please go ahead. But I'm not sure it was courage as such, right? It was. Or maybe it was stupidity. Maybe we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into.
No, Irish jokes.
Yeah, you're right in some ways, though, that being Irish, being journalists, but also not being part of the pro-life movement meant we were able to look at this and think, this is a movie, and it's not a pro-life movie, it's a crime movie. We were able to come at it with a fresh idea. If we've been in the movement 20 years, we'd have jammed the movie full of pro-life talking points, right?
Sure.
And the movie, people say the movie is, it's entertaining. It's a proper movie. It's got drama. It's got tension. It's got all that. And so I think. So I mean, when I thought we got to make this our next project, and I was thinking about a podcast or whatever. I went back and I told Anne, we got to do this. Back to California, and Anne says, no, we don't do abortion. We're not doing this.
It was a hard sell, right?
Sorry?
It was a hard sell even at home, right?
Well, it was a hard sell, and then I made the clever idea of ordering the transcripts, the daily transcripts. And when we got them, I just gave them to Anne, and she read them. And she said, okay, that's our next project.
And I think, was it an homage to you two when I think Dean Cain, when they were reading the case file, said, "What are you doing for the next few years?" Wasn't that in the book? Wasn't that you two?
Yes, that's us. Like, what are you doing? Hey, let's do a little project about this Gosnell trial. 4 or 5 years later, we're still at it.
So one of the things that I thought you did really well, and why the reason people should go see this movie, is when this case broke, it was not being covered. When it started being covered, because Kirsten Powers essentially shamed the media in USA Today, I believe, or the Wall Street Journal, for not covering the story after Hemingway and some other bloggers had been covering it. Then the courtroom fills up, and it's dramatized very well. But the narrative was that Gosnell is a rogue operator, that he doesn't represent the industry, that abortions are not like this, that he's a one-off, that this is the black eye. And when you interview Janine Pirro, or who was it, the lawyer, the abortion doctor character, who admits doing 30,000 abortions, and I think in the book it's actually 40,000. When the defense attorney flips the narrative and defends him as if this is everything he does is standard in the industry, this is about you guys being racist and about pigeonholing this man when he's just like every other abortion doctor. I thought that was really well done and powerful, because there's a lot of truth to that.
Well, I think that's the thing. It's powerful because it's true, right? I mean, his defense was very, legitimate. It wasn't legitimate, but his defense, almost made it over the finish line. We talked to the jury, So there's a character in the movie, but it's verbatim from the trial. And except for, as you pointed out, one thing. So they asked this doctor, this good abortionist who's there to show how a good abortion is done. They ask her, how many abortions have you done? And in the movie, we have her saying 30,000. In reality, in the courtroom, she said 40,000. But we thought, people aren't going to believe that when we tell them in the courtroom, right? When we tell them in the movie, we'll just break it down to 30, because just people won't get, people will just say this is not true, and it'll take them out of the movie.
You have to round down, right? It's too high of a number.
It's too high of a number.
Yeah.
So, and then, when she was then asked to describe an abortion, I mean, the jury was shocked by abortion. The jury started off pro-choice, because you weren't allowed to be pro-life beyond the jury. They were not pro-choice at the end of it, and it was this evidence. And then the defense lawyer asks her, "What happens if you have a baby born alive?" Because that was what happened with Gosnell. Babies were born alive. He would kill them. He would murder them. And she's a good abortionist. But what happens if a baby's born alive by accident, not by plan? And she eventually was forced to say, "Oh, well, then we would give it comfort care." And you could hear everyone in the courtroom going, "Comfort care." All these hard-bitten journalists with cigarettes and whiskey in their hand going, "Comfort care? I've never heard of that. Well, what's that comfort care?" And it turns out that the comfort care, she says, we take the baby, we put it aside, we cover it with a blanket. Eventually, it will pass. I now have a cat. This is not one of Gosnell's cat. I have a cat walking across my path. Say hello to Scaredy Cat.
Say, Scaredy Cat. You were great in the movie, Scaredy Cat. Top-notch, Oscar-worthy performance.
So I'm going to just keep Scaredy Cat nice and contented here so he doesn't walk across. So, yeah, sorry, where was it? Yes, so she said comfort care, and all these journalists are going, "It's comfort care? You know what comfort? I don't know." So the defense lawyer says, "What's comfort care?" We put the baby aside, and we put it, cover it with a blanket. Eventually, it will pass. And as the defense lawyer says, Gosnell's being accused of babies being born alive, and he's killing them quickly with a pair of scissors. Let's be blunt. She has babies born alive, and she's putting them aside and letting them die of hunger and dehydration.
Yeah.
And he's been charged with murder, and she's a world expert. She's an expert witness in a court case. I mean, explain that one to me. Can someone explain to me how one is murder, one is capital murder. He was going to be executed, and the other means she can be at conferences talking about her. She gets awards. She's a respected professional. She's an expert witness. Can someone tell me the difference of what she does? As the lawyer in our movie says, it's actually more humane to kill someone quickly than let them die of starvation or dehydration.
Yeah, the defense lawyer makes that case. I wasn't in the courtroom, so I know that the expert is visibly uncomfortable. as
Yeah.
telling these truths. But for me, that's what truth seeking is, where something doesn't make sense and you raise your hand and say, wait a minute. Why are we using euphemisms? And this, to me, the entire industry is shrouded in euphemisms. The word abortion itself, right, doesn't really tell you what is happening. So it's the reason I think people that are not familiar with the industry, that are not comfortable watching these things, should go and do it, because you don't shock them. But when the defense attorney tells the truth, right, which they can't do in an OJ case, they can't do in cases that are where the guy is obviously paid a lot of money to get the guy off and not to tell the truth. In this case, I can't remember a more prolific case where the defense attorney used the truth as a defense and their client was sentenced to murder.
That's a very good point, actually. That's a very good point. Actually, that's a very good point that I hadn't really thought about. The defense attorney is using truth as his defense, which is unusual in a criminal case.
Yeah, never see it.
Yeah.
And their client went to murder, and I thought it's the one. And so to say that, well, this is a rogue one, I think I saw an interview recently where you said that there are doctors in Texas, there are doctors in Delaware, there are doctors in New Jersey, where their files read very similar to Gosnell. And I don't know if it was in the movie or an interview where he said there are Gosnells all over the country, and people don't know because they don't want to know, or because they're not being told.
They're also protected by the state. You know, they're a protected species. They can do incredibly criminal things, but no one wants to pursue them because they don't want to go there.
You can't run a lemonade. If you're a kid, you run a lemonade stand without a license, you'll get shut down. If you run a restaurant and someone complains, the inspectors are right on you. I'm a business owner. I'm familiar with it. I believe it was a decade or so that went by where he wasn't even licensed and he was running his clinic. And he had what was the guy's name? The governor, Tom Ridge, who basically told the city council, whoever it was that inspects them, that we just don't want to touch abortion clinics because of the stigma.
Department of Health. No, not the stigma, actually. I mean, it's very interesting. Tom Ridge, was running as a pro-choice Republican because you remember, it's well known you have to be moderate to win Pennsylvania. A certain election in 2016 has disproven that nonsense, but that was the political wisdom, conventional wisdom for decades. You had to be a moderate to win Pennsylvania, and Tom Ridge ran as a pro-choice Republican, and there's a law that says abortion clinics must be inspected every year. Tom Ridge got his lawyers to look at that law and said that law didn't say what it actually said. So until they went in on the pill mill operation to raid a clinic for selling pills, and that was a DEA-led operation, not one health inspector, police officer, anything had been in that clinic for 17 years.
It's unbelievable. And the last thing I want to ask you is more philosophically, because you didn't come at this as a pro-life activist and you were actually skeptical of them. You've talked about how many of the jurors converted or were persuaded. Many of the actresses involved were impacted by the project. When we have another president in my lifetime who goes to Planned Parenthood and tells them you're doing God's work. When you have Gosnell, who afterwards, Ann McElhenney reported in the book, was not repentant of what he did, but actually said that he'd found Jesus and knows that God knows that he's helping these people. You have a very fundamental philosophical and ideological divide between people who are hitting return to sender on these children and believe they're doing God's work. It's confusing to me because someone has to be wrong. And I think the power of your movie is that it exposes people to uncomfortable facts that they haven't considered. And it shows them the evidence that not only is someone wrong, they're lying about it. And to say that they are doing it God's work, for me, it's the definition of carrying the name's Lord in vain, which is the only one of the 10 commandments that has a caveat affixed to it, that is something that the Lord will not allow. And that's how I define this. How do you define it as the person actually who made the film? How do you see it?
Where the film fits in a worldview, or
yeah, in terms of, the movie was not supposed to be about abortion; it was supposed to be about crime and murder. But what, in terms of your philosophy and how you look at it, I guess I don't even have a specific question for you.
Look, this is a movie about truth. Actually, the truth will set you free. And the truth is uncomfortable. That is tough. That's my philosophy. It's not a very articulate one. It's not a very, doesn't have big words in it. But, the truth will set you free. This is the truth. Deal with it. But deal with the truth. Don't come at me with it's a clump of cells, safe, legal, rare, we need to make, all this talking points that aren't true actually, and people under oath have shown it not to be true. So deal with that. I mean, go and see the movie. I mean, as I say, this movie, it's an hour and a half to watch. It's 2 hours to Google afterwards. So go and see it, and go on October the 12th. Go the opening weekend. This is the movie Hollywood doesn't want you to see. The mainstream media don't want you to see. So let's, I'm glad that you're trying to encourage your friends to go. Please encourage your friends to go, all of you watching, and let's make this a success and stop the censorship.
We will, and I want my audience to know I took 2 people who had never heard of Gosnell to kind of guinea pig them a little bit, and the gal I took told me the next morning she stayed up for 3 or 4 hours, couldn't sleep. She was just reading everything she could about the case. So
that's what I said. Yeah, literally, it's an hour and a half to watch it and 2 hours to Google it. So.
I'd forgotten about that until you said it. So October 12th, tell your friends, go see it. How quickly do you need to see it for the movie to get distributed properly? First weekend, first and second weekend?
First weekend. The problem with a lot of people who go to Christian movies, this is not a Christian movie as such, but it's that kind of basis. It's in that sector. People, I'll go next week, I'll go the week after. It won't. If you don't go the first weekend, it won't be in a lot of theaters the next weekend. This is not a slow burn. It needs to be, nothing succeeds like success, and this needs to be successful in the first weekend.
Go see Gosnell October 12th. I'm talking to Phelim McAleer, the co-author and really the spur behind this wonderful project. Go see it when it comes out. I'll have links to the website, Gosnell Movie, as well as where you can buy the book to get all the inside scoop on the movie and its beginnings and where we are at this point. So, Phelim, great work. I tip my hat to you, and I really appreciate you coming on to talk about it.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Okay, have a good one. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.